And I'll request our CEO, Professor Dara, to come and continue the next part of the program. Prof, please.
I must thank you all for your understanding and allowing the PS to come before the scheduled time. I'll take you through my speech for today's event so that I can invite the chair, who will in turn invite Monica and then Jordan in that order. So the Principal Secretary in absentia, State Department for Higher Education Research, Dr. Beatrice Inyangala, the Chairman, Board of Trustees, National Research Fund, Professor Emeritus, Ratema Micheka. These days we call him the Maverick, right after the launch of his book. The head of British Council, Ms. Monica Blajescu, head of East Africa Research and Innovation Hub, FCDO, Mr. Jordan Kiongo. All the chairpersons present, I can see Professor Mnav here with us. The Board of Trustees, National Research Fund, represented here today. The chairperson of the Vice Chancellors, present here today. Vice Chancellors of Public and Private University with us today. CEOs present, directors, DRST and DUE present. Keynote speakers present, development partners, distinguished professors and guests, my colleagues at work and staff, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is with great humility and joy to welcome you today to witness the official launch of the National Research Repository. It marks a major milestone in the annals of history for the National Research Fund. It ascertains the rightful place for National Research Fund within the national research and innovation ecosystem. Internationally, it serves as a beacon for strengthening research and innovation, thus making Kenya competitive within the global innovation index rankings. The importance of this event can be contextualized by an African proverb which says, a single bracelet does not jingle. A single bracelet does not jingle. This underscores the significance of your presence here today, and it amplifies the need for knowledge sharing, since majority of the institutions represented here today have a repository. Thus, by coming together, we will create a shared value system to transform research ecosystem through an open science and a shared platform of existing interoperable repositories. I extend my gratitude to the Principal Secretary, Dr. Inyangala, for her relentless dedication and visionary leadership. Her unwavering support has been instrumental in realizing our goal of establishing a national database for research publications. I also wish to express my profound appreciation to the National Research Fund Board of Trustees for their invaluable contributions and guidance. Your support has been pivotal in shaping the National Research Fund into a beacon of excellence. And we recently received an award as the most inclusive research fund recently during the Daima Awards. And that actually underscores the relevance and the importance of National Research Fund. Similarly, our gratitude goes to the British Council and Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, ably represented by Monica Blajescu and Mr. Jordan Kiongo, respectively, for their partnership, which embodies a shared commitment to fostering research and innovation between Kenya and the United Kingdom. A special thanks to the heads of universities and research institutions who have generously volunteered to harvest data on the critical thematic areas of water, land, and energy. Your contribution is a testament to the collaborative spirit that drives our nation's research endeavors. Ladies and gentlemen, I am proud to announce that the National Research Fund has so far deposited over 600 articles from research projects previously funded by the National Research Fund and other agencies into the repository. These reports provide invaluable insights into the drivers of research formulation, the utilization and commercialization of research outputs. Similarly, the role of female researchers and to the extent of partnerships and collaboration in research have also been featured. They also offer a thorough analysis of sources and mechanisms of research funding. These findings will undoubtedly enhance our informed decision-making in future in regards to funding water, land, and energy in Kenya. Ladies and gentlemen, as we celebrate this momentous occasion, let us remember that the journey does not end here. The launch of the National Research Repository is a significant step forward, but it is just the beginning of a continuous endeavor to promote and sustain research and innovation in our beloved country. As we work towards the future, the National Research Fund has laid down strategic plans to further enhance the National Research Repository. We are committed to expanding the repository to cover a broader spectrum of research themes and ensuring that the platform remains inclusive and representative of our diverse research landscape in Kenya. Continuous data harvesting will be a priority to keep our repository up to date with the latest research findings and innovations. To ensure the sustainability and efficiency of the repository, we will allocate adequate annual budget to its operations. This financial commitment will ensure that the repository continues to serve as a vital resource for researchers, policymakers, and the public. Moreover, we recognize the importance of skilled management in the success of the repository. Therefore, we plan to have in place analysts and librarians who will be responsible for managing and harvesting, similarly depositing the metadata for relevant research publications and seminal reports. Finally, your presence here today magnifies our shared commitment to strengthen the mandate of National Research Fund, which is compiling and maintaining research and innovation database. It is now, I think, my singular duty to invite my chair, who will be able to give his remarks, and similarly officially welcome you here and the rest of the speakers. Thank you so much, and may God bless you.
Thank you again for clapping for him again. Do one more small clap. Really, I think I now come back really, but I'll not take again as long as I did promise. But allow me, Monica, if you don't mind for a minute, to really ask all the vice chancellors present to stand up with their team. If their teams are here so that you can actually know who they are. Vice chancellors, please. Who are in here? Yeah. Why don't you shout your names so that we appreciate all of you? Just shout your names very fast. I can tell Mary, I can tell colleagues, so that we don't have to. Yeah. Please, endelea haraka kidogo. Nitaspiri hapa kidogo dakika moja tu. Mwita. Patia mwita or you.
Thank you very much, Bwana Chair. Good morning. I am Peter Mwita, Vice Chancellor, Acting Vice Chancellor, Kaimosi Friends University.
Good morning, all. I'm Mark Otieno, the Director of Research, University of Embu.
I'm Professor Elijah Mwenga, Acting Vice Chancellor, the Open University of Kenya.
Daniel Mugendi, Vice Chancellor, University of Embu.
Is a soprano here? Oh, men. Mary Ndungu, Vice Chancellor, Kirinyaga University, and I'm here with my librarian, Stephen Maina, over there.
Thank you, Maina.
Good morning, Joseph Rotich, the Vice Chancellor, Laikipia University.
Good morning, Caroline Thoreau, representing Professor Paul Wainaina for Kenyatta University. We have our librarian, Dr. Njoroge, present.
Dennis Ochuodo, DVC academic representing Vice Chancellor Joost.
Professor Benson Ojwang, Director Research, Kaimosi Friends University, accompanying my VC, Professor Mwita.
That's right. Thank you.
Laban Airo, Vice Chancellor, Daystar University.
Thank you. One more.
Good morning, everyone. Regina Ochieng, University Librarian, University of Kabianga, also representing the VC, UK.
Great.
Good morning, everyone. Isabel Musisi Edebe from Moi University, representing the university. I'm a librarian there.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. Professor Monyeri from Chuka University, representing Professor Henry Mutembe, the Vice Chancellor.
Good morning, everyone. Professor Nancy Mongai, Director Research at Egerton University, representing the Vice Chancellor, Professor Isaac Kibuage. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Evans Houma, Director Research, Rongo University, representing Professor Samuel Good, who is the Vice Chancellor.
Great. Please, you may sit down now. Can I also request, there's one more at the far end. And as he does that, can I ask the CEOs also to really stand up and say, I saw Munari, I saw Andala is already introduced. Who else is there, CEO? Munari? Oh, he left. Okay, please go ahead.
Yeah, Professor Paul Moshimbaguyo, DVC Research and Extension, Pwani University, representing the Vice Chancellor, Professor James Kaindi.
Thank you very much. Thank you. NSCO? No, really. Okay, really, just please allow me also, Monica, for 1 minute. They are my seniors here. Professor Munavu, stand, say something. Professor Airo, stand, say something. Then you sit, please, kindly.
You want me to say something?
Yes, sir.
Okay, something.
No, not the word. Not the word.
Yeah, my name is Rafael Munavu. I'm no longer Vice Chancellor. I left all that many years ago in 2002. But since then, I have been involved in various activities touching on higher education, but most important, on aspects of research. And the question that we should be asking ourselves, and I hope we are going to be responding, is research for what? And research for who? And how does it impact on our society? That, to me, is extremely important. And therefore, it is really a pleasure and an honor to be here. And just before I sit down, it doesn't mean that when you leave being a Vice Chancellor, you forget about life. So since I left, I have been in charge of the Presidential Working Party on education reforms. But most important, what we are handling now, I am the chairman of the Konza Technopolis, and I want to extend a warm welcome to all of you. And as we talk about repository of research, and repository of knowledge, repository of technology, and so on, the place to always remember is Konza Technopolis. Tuko pamoja, eh? Asante sana.
Yeah, thank you very much. First of all, I want to appreciate Professor Munavu. As a chemist like me, we knew him to be an outstanding chemist during our time. And also Mugendi, our chair for the Public University Vice Chancellors. I think a repository is a huge step. It's a huge, huge step for us because we will have access to what is going on in our country and build on it. Right now with Kenya, the Kenya Innovation Agency the vice chancellors are also getting into a very interesting area of innovation, entrepreneurship, and commercialization. So it is not enough just to do the research. It must be go out there and be commercialized so that universities can be seen as entities giving impetus to the economic development of this country. So this is just a beginning, and it will trigger a whole process, and we are excited to be here. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very, very much, really. Give me a clap. Thank you so much.
I forgot to say something. Sorry, Chair.
Yes, please.
Professor Munava, I thought about you as a chemist, but when I went to Daystar, I was pleasantly surprised and delighted that Professor Munavu actually donated land to Daystar University. There are very few of us who will do that.
Really?
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Many of us actually didn't know that. So, Prof, be ready to donate to me something. Now I know, please. Can you sympathize with me on my little piece? Monica, really, for your presence and your colleagues from the British Council. Protocol observed, as already mentioned. All of you noted. Let me thank you so very much indeed for getting time to come and join us in this extremely important start of this depository. On behalf of the National Council of the National Research Fund, and on behalf of the trustees of the fund, let me represent them by telling you that they are here. A few of us are here. Can I ask Daktari to stand up, my team of National Research Fund, those who are here, please say a word also quickly from there if you can, on behalf of the others who are not even here.
Morning.
Yes, morning.
On behalf of all the National Research Fund trustees, we want to welcome each of you to this particular very important event for us when we are going to consolidate the different research that is taking place in our country. Thank you.
Thank you. I actually took about only 5 minutes on this other detour. So let me say this. Thank you again for being here. Collaboration endeavors that were put forth, the National Research Fund and the esteemed British Council really will enable us get information that we want, keep it well all through. Kenneth, you are noted. Keep doing what you are doing. My remarks are very brief, already been summarized by quite a number, and my CEO went through exactly what we shall be doing. But let me say this. We will be, as a National Research Fund, courtesy of the British Council, honor this, and having universities present represented here, we look forward to really getting information that can be kept private, but choose what must be completely public so that we know what we have, we know what must be protected, and know what must go out. We are keeping in line with SDG number 17. Very simply said, international, national, global world all through. But that does not completely mean anybody can get into a bedroom and make it a national, globalization of information. And Allah went through what we do. The reasons for this will serve as a dynamic platform for the dissemination of knowledge, preservation of research outputs for Kenya that can actually be shared even out. That's why I said that SDG 17 opens a lot of space, a lot of hole, some of which holes or space can occasionally be abused. So this platform really, I acknowledge the open access is great, essential for improving research, great, but at what level? We foster these cross-cultural matters, tradition, knowledge, which Munavi is always talking about tradition and culture all through. Let's see how best some of that information could be kept for years to come. Like I said, ladies and gentlemen, this is a new chapter. Stakeholders being there, researchers, but we collaborate, promote heavily science-based decision-making. Let us make decisions that are great, really. And I feel sorry that occasionally we jump into conclusions that have not been fully researched on. Let us do, we're researchers. Universities are really the key ones. And every country pays tribute, it pays a lot of attention to whether it is a very small island, Fiji, or bigger countries like US, UK, etc. Universities matter, and research centers and stations make a difference in making sure that what you select to keep is really nationally important to all of us. So as I conclude, colleagues, I had a big speech, but really, been said, we repeat, if I continue what I'm saying, is to appreciate your presence, appreciate the British Council, appreciate what you do, take note of the SDG 17, read it well, and note the difference between what must be shared and what must be protected to the last letter in our lives. Other than that, it's my really great pleasure to invite Monica Plagesco to come and continue. She's also busy. She's running away to another meeting. No, you're not busy. So I can continue talking. Shall I? No, really, I think it's great that you are here. Thanks, my colleagues, vice chancellors, former present ones, and the people like the Kenneth team. Be as comfortable as you can. There is tea, I do know, and I do not know how long we are here, but I think we are here, and I'll up to what time? Lunchtime. So lunch is served. Don't leave before lunch is served. I wish you well, and this is my duty. Monica, my pleasure to invite you. Give her a clap, please. Thank you very, very much. Yeah. Okay.
I'm sorry I cut you short.
No. You were showing I learned your psychology. She actually had said, you just go ahead.
Asante sana. Thank you so much, Chair. Colleagues, good morning. Habari asubuhi. PS Inyangala in absentia, Chairman Prof. Michieka, members of the NRF board, CEOs present, esteemed vice chancellors, colleagues from other development agencies in attendance today, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with you this morning. It is an honor for us at the British Council, and it is an honor for me personally to be with you here today to celebrate a milestone in the development of Kenya's research infrastructure. You've heard me say many times before, for those of you who know me and who know the British Council, that we are committed to building and improving international partnerships for research collaboration, for knowledge exchange, and for scientific outreach, increasing trust and building long-term relationships between research communities, policymakers, and public audiences. Our focus will always continue to be on excellence, on inclusivity, and on building trust in research. Quality and relevant research that results from international research collaborations can address local and global challenges and can continue to promote inclusive growth. It is really in this context that just over a year ago, we had a series of conversations with Prof. Andala, with his team at the NRF, and I do want to acknowledge the team at the NRF who've been working tirelessly over the last few months. We had a series of conversations, and we agreed to partner to help strengthen collaboration and to promote both generation but also utilization of quality research through a national research repository. Our interests were dovetailing and aligning with the interests of the NRF, and that's when strong partnerships are forged, when the purpose aligns and when there is meeting of the minds. We know that accessible knowledge plays a central role in addressing socioeconomic challenges. As a centralized open access platform, the National Repository holds the potential to increase access to research that is undertaken in Kenya, but also to drive better utilization of research, be it in policymaking or in addressing real-world problems. The British Council is proud to have played a small part in helping the NRF realize this potential. The platform that we'll be launching here today represents a cornerstone in the development of a national priority set out in Kenya's Science, Technology and Innovation Act. And we are glad to have walked that journey this far with the NRF. As PS Inyangala mentioned in September last year, an open access repository is not just a digital archive. It is indeed a catalyst for change. The research repository will facilitate the sharing of research findings, data, methodologies, allowing researchers, policymakers, but also, we hope, the private sector, as well as the general public, to more easily engage and benefit from latest advancements in research. By making research openly available, it will improve access and it will improve a more equitable distribution of knowledge for those who seek that knowledge. In that sense, we hope that the National Research Repository is going to democratize knowledge and how it is accessed in Kenya. But you will also encourage others to build upon existing work, and in doing so, you will avoid duplication, focus on addressing gaps, and accelerating the pace of progress. There's also a very strong element of capacity development that we have been pursuing jointly through our partnership with the NRF. Access to the repository will enable educators, students, and the professionals in different fields to access high-quality resources, and in doing so, enhancing skills, knowledge, and capabilities, which are essential for driving socioeconomic transformation. And as NRF colleagues can tell you, I'm looking at them around the room, the ones who've been working tirelessly behind the scenes, the very process of setting up the repository so far has already helped develop stronger research communities who have come together to share lessons and improve research and research management practices. And that is already a small but not insignificant success. By providing a platform for researchers to access each other's work, the repository is already starting to foster collaboration and to foster interdisciplinary research, which in turn will lead to new discoveries and innovations. Improved awareness of Kenya's research capabilities will help foster stronger collaboration, not just between institutions and researchers in Kenya, but also between Kenya and other countries. In October last year, I had the privilege to accompany a higher education delegation from Kenya to travel to the UK for a series of peer-to-peer exchanges and institutional visits. During various conversations that took place, it was acknowledged that a large part of the research that takes place in Kenya is not known and it is not accessible to a global research community. This hinders collaboration and partnerships. In a context where much of the research in Kenya remains in analog form, a digital open access platform can also help break barriers to international collaboration. And it is by participating in international research projects and initiatives that Kenyan institutions and researchers can further leverage their strong expertise and their resources to contribute to global knowledge exchange and to address shared global challenges. As a digital open platform, we hope the repository will become the go-to place for different types of consumers of research. By digitizing knowledge and making it readily available, the repository will improve accessibility and help accelerate progress, as the PS mentioned earlier today, and as mirrored by Prof. Andala and by Prof. Michieka. It is our strong hope that policymakers can more easily access and use evidence-based research, enabling them to make informed decisions and develop effective policies to address social challenges and promote sustainable development. It is also our hope that young entrepreneurs can be inspired by research, by accessing evidence which helps them identify market opportunities and generate ideas for new ventures that solve shared problems. Such research-informed startups and businesses contribute to job creation, economic diversification, and wealth creation. And I was very pleased that Prof. Airo, who sits on the Kenya Network of Entrepreneurial Institutions Leaders, and he's been fundamental to getting off the ground a lot of the work that we are doing with Kenya, is here with us today and acknowledges the potential of the repository for the work that we are doing around commercialization. I would like to take a moment to thank the universities, the researchers, all of you here in the room today who are part of this project, which is not just a project. It is with your effort and your commitment that we can make this platform possible by providing insights, by providing information on the research outputs and the publications that you have been producing. As Prof. Andala mentioned, we've also been undertaking some analysis around the formulation of research questions, around the role of female researchers in that research management, around the utilization of research, and also on how the research has been developed, whether with funding from here or from overseas, or whether it was a research partnership. We are hoping that in the next weeks we will be able to release some of the insights from some of this analysis that the colleagues at the NRF, with your input, have been working on. As I conclude, let me express my sincere hope for the National Research Repository to become part of Kenya's most critical infrastructure that enables dissemination and utilization of knowledge in the country for the 21st century. I wish the NRF every success in its ambition to expand the repository to other areas as it puts in place robust plans to maintain a dynamic, live platform. And I want to acknowledge support from UK International Development, who are already matching some of our British Council funds for the second phase of the project, expanding into the area of food security and agriculture. We hope that other development partners will come on board and support other themes to be developed. And I'm really glad to hear from Prof. Andala and from the PS earlier today that the NRF and the ministry are already setting aside funds to continue this worthy endeavor. Further expansion is necessary to cover all key areas of research, but this will require, as I said, more resources, and you will require collective determination to indeed make this a success. It will require ongoing engagement with the research community so that it continues to deliver high quality, relevant, and applicable research outputs. But it will also require concentrated effort to continuously improve the platform, its features, and its overall visibility based on user feedback. And I know that this is something that the team is going to be working over the next few months. I call upon all of us here today to help make the National Research Repository the go-to place for accessing the latest insights and research advancement in Kenya. And I congratulate the NRF colleagues again. Thank you for your partnership, and thank you to you all for being part of this journey. Asante sana. And it is my great pleasure to now invite my colleague Jordan. We are tagging team here today, and we are very grateful for having Jordan with us from the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office. Jordan, over to you.
Thank you very much, Monica. Good morning. The Chair of the NRF Board of Trustees, Professor Micheka, members of the board, the CEO for NRF, Professor Andala, all CEOs present, the distinguished vice chancellors who are in this room, and all distinguished guests. It's an honor for me to be here this morning for different reasons, both as Monica said, as a representative of FCDO, the UK government, but also as a researcher myself, knowing the importance of the kind of work that we are working together on. And I'll give just a few remarks. I think it comes on the tail end of remarks that have been given by quite a number of people, so I'll keep mine as brief as possible. But it really is an honor to be part of this and to see this coming together. So science, technology, and innovation underpins the United Kingdom's approach to sustainable development. Investment in science and technology is more important than ever, and it is at the heart of our Prime Minister's priorities, as you probably have heard in different forums. We also recently published the new white paper on international development, and this explicitly recognizes the need to shift our approach to partnership. And increasingly, we are looking to build long-term, reliable, and equitable partnerships, working towards shared development objectives. And this is something that has been mentioned by a couple of colleagues, including Professor Andala, that we share these development objectives. Our sustainable impact, our partnership will be inclusive and more locally led because we know that our funding will be more sustainable and impactful when we empower and partner with those who best understand local needs and priorities. So that's really a big shift in how the UK is doing development, is to focus on partnership with people who understand what is happening on the ground, as opposed to previous dimensions where it was more top-down and it was being dictated in terms of what people should fund on as part of, focus on as part of development. Through continued investment in science and innovation partnership, we continue to find solutions to global challenges. So even this repository, we know that it is not only addressing, and I think Professor Andala mentioned this, not just local challenges, but global challenges. And there have been many cases in evidence of that, including Kenya's support and response to the COVID pandemic that we all know very clearly. The UK is committed to forming long-term and equitable partnerships in Africa to ensure the incredible potential of African science and innovation quickly delivers impactful and transformative change. And we've partnered with many people across the continent, but also in this country. And allow me to just mention a couple of examples of the kind of partnerships that we've had. The Science Granting Council's initiative supports 17 NRF equivalents across the continent, and the Kenya NRF is also part of the of SGCI, and approaching 10 years of implementation. And the last gathering was, I think, towards the end of last year in Mombasa, just anniversary, and it's a testament to how long we are doing this investment and partnerships with Africa. Together with Wellcome Trust, the UK government has invested for decades in the Kemri Wellcome Trust Research Partnership to both conduct world-class research, but at the same time also support the development of high-caliber researchers who are supporting in evidence and research generation in health, not just in Kenya, across the continent, and a lot of them have gone on to become global leaders in many global organizations, including the WHO and other global organizations that are supporting health across the continent. And also, as I mentioned earlier, so part of that investment supported Kenya's response to COVID. A lot of the genomic sequencing and stuff that was done in this country was done at Kemri Wellcome with support from the UK government. And for me, actually, it was really useful. We were there in November, and it was very good to see the story of a young man from Western Kenya who was telling us how he started off as a farmer and somehow shifted into research. And now is actually currently leading a research group, a high research group, a high impact research group at Kemri Wellcome Trust. And he was part of the group that was developing data that the Kenyan government was using to decide how to handle lockdowns and how to handle movement of people and how to handle vaccination and all that kind of stuff. A young man who over time was developed from just being a village boy with no direction at that point, but now is actually a very impactful researcher. So that is the kind of partnership we're looking for. Slowly working to build the capacity of individuals who then go on to make an impact in this country. Through the RISER program, we are working together with NACOSTI, who I believe are represented here, the Ministry of Education, whose PS was here, and the International Service for Acquisition of Agrobiotech Applications, so ISA, to develop the National Research Policy, which is hopefully going to be in Parliament soon, that will help to support the management of research across the country, and this is going to be cross-sectoral. This is something that we hope to get through Parliament and into law quite soon. Then through our partnership with Mawazo Institute, we are supporting research and career development for female scientists through our commitment to gender equity and social inclusion. So someone mentioned here about the need for including women in research. So together with Mawazo, we are supporting female scientists who are not only doing good science, but we know as a collective, but also especially as women in this group, that there are many challenges that women face in their career as research scientists that men may not be facing. And we are happy to develop, to report on little gains, such as, for example, so such a meeting, you would have a researcher who would want to come, but because they have minder duties, care duties for their babies, they're not able to come. And we support Mawazo and other institutes to provide care for those babies and for those women so that they're able to attend this and support their research without any hindrances. So this is the kind of thinking that we need to have. And then also thinking about research in the margins, because there's also a lot of research that happens outside of Nairobi, and there are many universities that are represented here, just hearing from the introduction from vice chancellors and the representatives, that we want to make sure that that research comes into the center. And this is kind of what the research repository does at a national level. Then FCDO also supports the generation, and this is to speak to what Professor Budavu and also Professor Micheka said, to support the generation of context-specific evidence to inform policy and programming. A good example is something that we'll be launching here on Tuesday, just after Easter, that was looking at the UK-Kenya partnership on the NAS arrangement. So an assessment to understand that arrangement, what is working, what is not working, based on evidence, so that decisions are made based on evidence. And that is what we are hoping to do, that we will drive together the ability of Kenya to be able to make policies and programming based on evidence. And that is something that we are very committed to. So I could say many more, but I won't. But all this research would be pointless unless it is utilized for national development and for the good of the common mwananchi, as Professor Munavo said. Why do we do the research? That is something that we need to be very cognizant of. That is where the National Research Repository comes in. The NRF and its partners have invested heavily in strengthening individual and institutional research capacity. The repository is part of our mutual venture in system-level capacity strengthening, and colleagues speaking before me and after me have gone into the details of its utility, so I won't get into the details. But very briefly, we see this repository as being fundamental in system-level research capacity strengthening. We also see it as a basis for the government of Kenya to monitor and evaluate investment in research and innovation. So there's a lot of research that goes on, but we don't have proper metrics or the facilities to be able to know what is being done and what is the impact of this research that is being done. It will be fundamental in our joint desire to also shift the power in terms of research to the global south, away from the global north. And then lastly, we think that this will serve as a rich repository for research and innovations that can be exploited for common good, including by making use of emerging tech, such as AI. Dr. Flora is here, and we work with her in a different capacity, and here she's as part of the Board of Trustees for NRF, and we are working on different platforms, including what she's doing at Epachasi with Carter and with our colleagues from South Africa, looking at how we can use AI to harvest insights from research that has already been done, to be able to synthesize them into a way, into something that is useful for policymakers. And my challenge to the NRF team that has worked tirelessly to do this is think about how you can advance it beyond just being a repository. How can we use emerging technology to be able to synthesize all this collection that will be in the repository into something that can be used not just by policymakers, but also by anyone who needs to use it, including the common mwananchi. So that's a challenge I push, to think about the next phase beyond just having a repository. How can we make better use of this? I'll stop there, but allow me, this being because we are just about to get into Easter, and this is also the holy month of Ramadan for our Muslim colleagues, allow me to conclude by making an analogy using a scripture that I read this morning from John chapter 13, a very interesting passage where Jesus was sitting at dinner with his disciples, and they were eating. And then it says that because he knew that he had all power in his hands and that he was going back to his Father, he then stood up, took a towel, wrapped it around himself, and then went on to wash the feet of his disciples. And for me, it just struck me how that is very contrasting to what we normally see in the world we live in the sense that when you recognize how much power you have, normally people would be exploiting that power to use it over others. But he used his power to serve. And that is a challenge I want to leave us with as we focus on this repository, and because here, this room is full of leaders from across the country, is the power and responsibility that is in your hands. What do you use it for? Is it to lord over others, or to use our research and the responsibilities that we've been given to really serve the Kenyans and the people of this continent? God bless you.
Thank you, Jordan. Let's appreciate Jordan for those insights. And now we will move to our next session, which will be facilitated by Dr. Gitau Njoroge. And please come and proceed.
Yes.
I forgot really, but I wanted to get that. This to get here, Daniel. He's the chairman of vice chancellors. Who actually listened. He was busy reading and he was out when I was going.
Karibu.
Thank you. Yes, good morning. Of course, Professor is always my teacher, and he has the right to harass me. So that's okay, it's allowed. So thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here this morning, and it's a great day. Thank you.
Thank you, VC. All protocols observed. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. We have entered into another session, and this time we want to understand about the repository, contextualize it, look at the journey, and to start us off, without wasting a lot of time, I would want to ask Dr. Ms. Joy Owango, Executive Director, that's Training Center in Communication. Are you around? Yes. Owango, karibu. It is.
Okay. Morning, everybody. Excuse me if you notice I'm a bit slow. I just landed from Addis and came straight for this meeting. So I'm a bit half asleep. So what I'm going to take you through is, may I have the clicker? So how, are you going to control it? Okay. So what I'm going to take you through is what I've been going through with most of you stakeholders. It's also part of the reason why I was in Addis, and that is how you can create strategic partnerships in having open science policy dialogues. Having a national research repository is a major output of Kenya's open science dialogue. We hosted an open science dialogue last year, and we brought in all the higher education stakeholders. This is just to give you context of what my presentation will be. And we brought in all the higher education stakeholders, and I can see most of them here, CLISC, NACOSTI, NRF, and with the purpose of having an open science policy. But then it's just not an issue of having a policy, it is what major activities are you going to create out of those policies. So the major activity that came out of that dialogue that was in September last year, was to come up with not only a policy, but then have a national repository. So it is quite exciting to see this conversation. And as I was even settling down, I was asking Professor Meoli Kashoda, is CLISC here? Because that was their primary objective, having a national repository. So it's good to see Dr. Gitao represented here. So next slide. So who are we? We are a research capacity trust, and I run it at the University of Nairobi. It's called Training Center in Communication. We've been in existence for the last 18 years, and what we do is we train, support, and empower researchers. Some of you have worked with us. Some of you may not know about us, and what we do is we help universities improve their research output and increase their visibility. We guide universities and also ministries of education in improving competitiveness in higher education, especially when you're looking at it from a research perspective, and looking at various aspects. Open science is one of them, and the outputs that come out of open science that aid in competitiveness. It's extremely agnostic. We don't subscribe to a gender on what we are going to support. We look at the higher education sector from an agnostic perspective, mainly because there are certain research areas that will be heavily supported, and there are those that will not be supported. And if you look at it from an agnostic perspective, you end up becoming equal in the supportive system. Over the years, we have supported over 30,000 researchers. So you're looking at master's and PhD level. So guiding them from research idea all the way to graduation. Master's and PhD. So it means even with PhD researchers who are struggling, we've been working with them. So we believe the research capacity process is what would you call it? Is a hand-holding process. You can't do this in isolation. So you need partnerships. And I can see some of the partners we've worked with, including Mawazo, are here, and NRF, our most recent partner. So next slide. So when you're looking at the various activities that we've been doing, still connected to this presentation is, number one is open science advocacy, which is primary to what we are doing. Because let's be honest, open science is the one thing that will make higher education equitable. It will give you a leveling competitive plane with researchers in the global north, and that is, it was good to hear that from the previous speaker. And also it helps in increasing your visibility. It aids in your competitiveness. Open science leads to increased citations. Increased citations leads to increased rankings. And in the increased rankings, you're looking at competitiveness. And out of competitiveness, let's look at the higher education as a business. Yes, I get that it has the element of social good, but at the end of the day, it's a business. By the time you're paying top dollars to go to a certain university, you want to attract top researchers, so top talent and top students. For you to make such a decision, you're looking at rankings. You're looking at research performance, you're looking at history of collaboration, and the amount of funding. Open science is one of the ways in which that can aid in that, because it aids in increasing the visibility. Open infrastructure is one of our activities, and I'm truly excited about the National Repository, because I'll take you through how our open infrastructure program can actually feed into the National Repository, because what we are using is, interestingly enough, AI to harvest metadata and increase African research output, particularly focusing on 3 areas which have been largely ignored: indigenous knowledge, cultural heritage, and patent data. For those of you who've got your master's and PhD, you're already familiar with citations and the citation process and the citation analytic process. If your work is cited, your work can be seen, okay? In order to have your work cited, it means that you have to attach certain identifiers known as persistent identifiers. The most common one is Crossref, which produces the digital object identifier. That persistent identifier helps in harvesting your work, making your work accessible in citation databases, which aid in citation analytics. For those who are in the knowledge management space, bibliometrics, and you're able to monitor the performance of researchers, institutions, and even countries, and even those who fund those institutions. Now, what has been left out, intentionally or not, is the 3 areas I've mentioned. A fun fact, 8% of African patent data is accessible in citation databases, and mainly because most of us cannot afford the minimum of $5,000 or $10,000 to pay to any of the big IP5 or WIPO. $5,000 to $10,000 is the annual budget given to a technical transfer office. So they would rather spend it at KIPI or their representative national institutions. And because of that, you're not going to see that patent data. If you and the metadata, so the information that describes that patent, is actually universal, set up by WIPO. So if you don't assign persistent identifiers, you don't see that work. And Africa is already attracting unicorn investment based on what exactly? And I know there are various parameters that measure innovation. So it was really nice to hear you talk about innovation, because we're giving a leg up to our technical transfer offices, so that even though they're using the same standards, it's giving them a competitive edge to make their patents accessible. That falls under open science advocacy, but with the help of open infrastructure. With cultural heritage and indigenous knowledge, 80% of Africans will refer to indigenous knowledge before going to the hospital. We've done that. I've done that. Okay, we've all done that. 40% of that goes to ethnobotany or ethnopharmacology. All right, so what does that mean? There's a strong contribution from indigenous knowledge to ethnobotany and ethnopharmacology. Now, how many of you are familiar with helicopter science? Those who are not familiar, hands up. Okay, so helicopter science is when, our partners from the Global North, is when our partners from the Global North come into the Global South, do research, do not recognize partners from the Global South, and take it. This has happened so many times. From a cultural heritage perspective, we've lost things like the Kiondo, we've lost the Kikoi. The Kikoi went to Louis Vuitton, New York Fashion Week, that was 2010. Kiondo, that has been a long battle since the 2000s, and the list goes on, and that is from cultural heritage. Let's look at it from music. Most of us love music, like the most common one as Kenyans is Sauti Sol. Sauti Sol is influenced by cultural heritage. Rumba, that is cultural heritage. There is a strong correlation with cultural heritage with research and innovation and commercialization. So where there is a weak link is the connection of how cultural heritage contributes to research, and also the indigenous knowledge contributes to research. You will see the research, but you will not see the contribution that cultural heritage made because it's amorphous. And because of that, that part is stolen. So the bulk of the information and research that is stolen coming out of Africa is so high, so we felt those that need to have persistent identifiers assigned to cultural heritage that contributes to research and at the end of the day, innovations as well. And how many of you have heard of the African Leafy Vegetables Project by JKUAT? Big project by Jomo Kenyatta. And this alluded to the use of indigenous plants that we've been eating ever since our great-grandparents, which were considered as weeds, but now they are considered as now superfoods. Okay? Now, what is saving that project is because persistent identifiers were assigned to the various communities where these leafy vegetables were originally from, because these leafy vegetables are unique to community area, to various areas in the country. There are certain leafy vegetables that grow in central Kenya, western Kenya, and the likes. So that is what we are talking about, how open infrastructure can aid in open science and increasing the visibility of that output. And with the national repository, it means that once you assign those persistent identifiers, they are found centrally. It protects attribution and it protects sovereignty of your work. And if there's going to be revenue generation, there will be an equal measure of where that money will be taken back to. Another program that we work on is data for impact and higher education stakeholder engagement. The next slide. So a bit more about what the Open Infrastructure Program is, what I was explaining to you, why we want to secure indigenous knowledge and cultural heritage. And we are truly excited that this is it's something we can also do at a national level. These are some of our founding partners. Some of them are represented here by Kenneth with Professor Meoli Kashoda. And I'm proud to say, we were told when we started this project that persistent identifiers cannot be produced in Africa. We have gone through the first draft, and it has been authorized by the board. So this is going to be the first time Africa, actually, let me be specific, the entire geographic global south is producing a persistent identifier that focuses on those three areas, and that is interoperable with existing identifiers. So meaning it would be compatible with any repository, because my assumption, the repository that you're using will be able to either produce handles. Okay, so it is compatible because some of our partners are the ones who produce handles, the donor foundation. So this is making it a first for everyone. Okay, so when you do that, it means that researchers are able to have a competitive edge. First of all, your sovereignty is protected. Your work is, the visibility of your work is increased. All right, and if there's revenue coming out of it, money comes out of it and you get your due. So this is what we are trying to work on, and I'm very pleased about the developments. So now our Open TCC Africa's active programs, let me focus on the Open Science Advocacy Program. Go to that slide, please. And I've talked about the infrastructure, so we are talking about the advocacy and how it is related to today's meeting. The next, yes, there. So we are not doing this in isolation. We are working with PLOS, Public Library of Science. For those of you who have published, Public Library of Science was actually the first journal in the world to come up with an open access policy, meaning making researchers have access to papers. They don't need to pay for papers. So funders could pay for it or institutions would pay for it. And because of that, we've been getting involved in quite a number of open science advocacy programs. And next slide, please. Oh, so I can use this. Fantastic. How does it work? So where am I pointing? Oh, it's not working. Just show me. Just move the slides. Just move the slides to transitioning to open science. Move again. Again. Yeah. So now, so why we are working with them is, first of all, they were revolutionary. About over 20 years ago, they came up with the concept of making papers accessible. Granted, you know, we're talking about publishers. The other publishers joined the bandwagon and took advantage of it. So what was originally a noble idea to make sure that research is accessible, we found ourselves in a situation, and some of you have gone through that, where some of the publishers were charging about $9,800 per paper, euros, sorry, to have your work published, and that beats the purpose. So now what PLOS is doing and working with us is coming up with open science advocacy programs to see how, number one, you can have better equitable publishing models. And having a repository, for all of you, for context, having a repository is actually a first step in having an equitable publishing model. All right? So when you're looking at publishing, everyone, let's not also look at the tail end of having it published in a paper and peer-reviewed. It is the process as well in making that work accessible. So having a national repository is actually the first step. And that is why when I started the talk, I was really happy when I said one of the outputs from the open science dialogues that we were hosting was Kenya wanted to produce a national repository. So we are critically looking at having an equitable publishing model process. And it starts with having a repository. Making your data available, okay, but making sure they have persistent identifiers so that it's not taken. Making your preprints available. So you see the level of partnerships that we've had my previous colleague talking about. At the end of the day, you will have data sets, you'll have preprints before you actually you publish your work. It makes sense to put it in a repository. All that entire process needs to have persistent identifiers. Okay, so it is the publishing process you're looking at equitable publishing models to make your work accessible. That aids in your visibility and increases your competitiveness. Okay, next slide. So the next slide, please. Next. Yes. So what we've been doing with our partners, and which is part of the reason why I'm here, is open science thought leadership. Most people feel there are unintended consequences of open science. I've said one of them, publishing costs. Some publishing costs have just become astronomical, and that is why coming up with a repository is one of the ways to mitigate it. It means that your work is already seen, the world is already seeing. The novelty of it is already won by being put in a repository. So you're not waiting for it to be published. Okay? It is already in a repository. It has an identifier, whether it is a preprint or even the data that is being put in there. So what we're trying to do is work with governments in the region, and we're also working with the Kenyan government in open science thought leadership. And I'm happy to say that we have the Kenya government is going to host the only open science, working group, which is going to create a national open science policy, okay? Which is going to create a national open science policy. And out of that national open science policy, we are going to have much more strategic activities and frameworks that are going to come out of it. But this is going to be the first in the region. But then what we are doing is that also at a regional level with the East African community, we've been able to create the first regional open science policy, which has been included within the STI policy. So this is a first not only in East Africa, but also in the continent as well. Open science engagement and advocacy, and also building communities of practice. So the various partners who are here, who are involved in setting up the National Research Repository, that falls under open science. And those are the people we want to work with in aiding and increasing the visibility of the output that comes out. All right, so as I wind up, just go to the slide that reads why open science dialogues. I need you to understand why open science dialogues. Just go down. Continue. I've talked about this. Yeah, I've talked about this. Just, yes, there. As I wind up, I need you to understand why open science is really important and why actually having a national repository. Don't look at it from an infrastructural perspective. Look at it from the bigger picture. What is the national repository doing in aiding the visibility of African research or Kenyan research? Number one, it is going to be nationalized, so meaning all the institutions are pulling into this. Number two, it protects our sovereignty. Number three, it helps in increasing our visibility of our work. But at the end of the day, we're able to present compelling cases for transformational science. You're going to see it. Nothing is going to be hidden. And really, institutions will not have an excuse to say that you can't see our work. It needs to be interoperable with the national repository. And right now, from an infrastructure perspective, the bulk of all our libraries or our universities are using DSpace. And I'm assuming that's the type of repository we are using, DSpace. So, and they are supposed to have upgraded it to version 7, which is the latest one. And version 7 means that it is interoperable with the national repository. So we don't have an excuse. So whether you're a small university or you're coming from the University of Nairobi where we are housed, you have a competitive edge. That's the power of open science. You have a compelling case to be equitable. You have a compelling case to make transformational science, make your work efficient, and get a higher return on investment on the public research funding, of which obviously the NRF is part of that process. What we end up doing is that you end up having an urgent need for policy frameworks and improved policy frameworks, national dialogues, and you end up addressing policy development gaps, because all of this is accessible in one place. None of these conversations are going to be done in isolation. We are trying to break that process. And that is the power of why we have a national repository. That is why we are adopting open science. And of course, all this is going in line with the UNESCO recommendation of open science. If you may not know, Kenya is one of the signatories. So of course, it makes sense why the partners decided to create work together to come up with a national repository, because it goes in line with what is expected from the UNESCO recommendation of open science. And as we are going through this process, we need to have continuous capacity strengthening, because, as I said, open science might be a new concept for some of you. There are always unintentional consequences to new concepts, and it's a good thing. We need to know how we can protect ourselves against those unintentional consequences, how to mitigate them, and also at the same time look at the big picture on how we can increase the visibility of our output through the adoption of open science, and in this case, with the infrastructural output of having a national research repository. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Joy Wango, for that presentation. Please, if you have comments, questions, just note them down. We'll have a session for that. Now I would want to ask Mr. Jacob Njagi, Resource Mobilization and Partnership in NRF, to talk to us about gaps, lessons learned, and the opportunities of developing the national repository at National Research Fund. And I think we need to understand the difference between open access and the open science, the difference between a depository and a repository. I hope he'll be able to explain that. Thank you. Karibu.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning once again. Okay, I'm just going to give you a brief overview for the journey that we end. And let me say that we started this work a year ago, and it came out of the discussions and deliberations that we have been engaging in the last 1.5 years or so. We have been engaging partners, we have been working with a number of partners, and new things are coming up at NRF, and we are grateful to this. And through this process, we've been able to come up with the first phase of the repository, where we identified 3 key areas around water and energy as the areas that we are to start with. And through that engagement, we have gone through to this process, and that's why today. And the journey that I want to take you through, we play a short video so that you can see how we have gone through this process. Please, can you play the video?
The National Research Repository is a digital open access collection of research outputs from different research institutions funded by the National Research Fund. It will benefit both researchers and institutions, whereby the researchers, they'll expose the research outputs to the outside world and most and the marketplace, where we can be able to move the ideas, the research outputs to the market.
We started the project by first of all doing desktop standards and mapping institutions that possess the thematic areas that we had focused on, which is land, water, and energy. We identified that institutions, and then after we developed data collection tools for data analysis. And once we already developed the repository of the infrastructure, we engaged stakeholders in September 2023.
We've done the repository in a modular form, and we've only covered 3 sectors. We intend to expand into the other sections that we've not been able to harvest and be able to build the repository. The other plans that we have is to set aside funds that will be able to be used for harvesting data and ensuring that it is kept current.
At the British Council, we are incredibly proud of our partnership with the National Research Fund, specifically through the support that we've been able to extend to help them get off the ground the National Research Repository. Fundamentally, we believe that knowledge plays a central role in addressing socio-economic challenges. And through such centralized platform, through the National Repository, we are helping the NRF to increase awareness of research that has been undertaken in Kenya. We're also helping to increase access to such research outputs. And by doing so, hopefully we are enabling potential users to access and to utilize this research to address national, regional, and global challenges.
Some of the key milestones that we have achieved during the development of the repository are that we've been able to create communities in the areas of land, water, and energy, and we already have data in that, and we have also been able to develop the open access policy. We have also had challenges during the journey for the development of the repository, because some of the research work is not in digital format, and we could not capture that. So we're looking forward to work with more partners and see how we can digitize the work which is not digital format, so that it is also captured in the repository.
The benefits of National Research Repository to researchers will, one, increase their visibility on what they've worked on, and secondly, it's going to increase their rating as researchers in terms of research index. To the policymakers, the repository will provide an opportunity to generate information-led policy decisions
It is our strong belief that the launch of Kenya's National Research Repository will make a direct contribution to knowledge dissemination and access, will facilitate the sharing of research findings, of data, and of methodologies, which will allow researchers, policymakers, but also businesses and the general public to access and benefit from the latest insights and advancements in research in Kenya.
We thank the British Council for coming in handy to support the National Research Repository. We are calling to more other like-minded partners to come join us Research Fund to expand beyond the scope that has been realized through the British Council.
We are already moving into a new phase of the project, which will see a mapping of research around food security and agriculture. And it is our strong belief that building on this proof of concept, other funders and other supporters from Kenya and overseas will acknowledge the value add of the National Research Repository.
Okay, thank you. And I hope, we just hope with this, I believe we'll see more cooperation from the institutions and we'll have continue enhancing our repository. Thank you.
I think we need to welcome NRF to the world of institutional repositories, the digital ones. Institution, I'm aware, the VCs, you're aware that universities have, in fact, most of the universities have institutional repositories, digital. And the work of CLISC, I'm no longer in the CLISC executive. I know when you see me, you see CLISC. I'm no longer there. We left the younger generation to take over, but that's the direction we wanted, and we hope NRF will bring us together and have one-stop shop for accessing research output in Kenya. It's my pleasure now to invite Professor Elijah Omwega, Vice Chancellor of University of Kenya, talk about innovation, ecosystem, and its intersections with the National Research Repository. Karibu, Prof.
Thank you so much, Master of Ceremony, for the day. The PS, Higher Education and Research in absentia, the Chairman of National Research Fund and other chairs of boards present, the CEO, Vice Chancellors, Kenneth, CEO, and other distinguished members present, and more importantly, British Council, represented by Monica. We want to appreciate you so much for what you're doing for our country. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me first appreciate the fact that we are represented here in big number by the Vice Chancellors, and I'm making a presentation here, perhaps also on behalf of these distinguished men and women. The Open University of Kenya, chartered last year by the President on the 3rd of August, is now a fully fledged established university offering 7 flagship programs. And the reason we're here is to foster the fact that we are also in the community of researchers. We already engaged in high-level research to extend, including methodologies on how to deliver using AI. I had it being mentioned earlier on the use of artificial intelligence to develop programs and even support in the process of harnessing indigenous information that will land itself in the repository. That is a very good space. So the topic that I was given, innovation ecosystem and its intersection with National Research Repository. I don't know whether I'm able to move the slides from here, or you'll do it over there? Okay, no problem. So this topic, I think, look at, it's got two parts. If you just go back to the topic again, innovation ecosystem and its intersection with National Research Repository. I want to thank Professor for asking me to present on this topic. So we are blending, or rather discussing, two parts there. The innovation ecosystem and how that supports or is supported by the National Research Repository that we are launching today. Next. So I just want to explain, for purposes of inclusivity, we are an inclusive university. The Open University has 5 pillars, one of which is inclusion, not leaving anybody behind. For purposes of inclusivity, let me explain what this national, or rather innovation ecosystem means. From this source here, complex network of people. So people are included, organizations, institutions, government policy and regulations that support and promote innovation. And this include interactions between people to take an idea and turn it into a marketable process, product or service. You can see there are startups there, venture capital, and all that goes in that ecosystem. So generally, this is what the ecosystem that we want to support, or that wish to support the National Research Repository. Can go on. So further, you can see it's a cyclic nature here. An ecosystem, from the very definition of that word, means there is interrelatedness of various actors or activities. There is the knowledge, the technology, transfer of that knowledge has already been mentioned, innovative projects in the industry, startups and others, local farms supporting that, universities, venture capital funds to ensure that there is accelerated growth in that ecosystem, and of course financial institutions to support the funding of the same. So a lot of this has already been covered, but just see how it ties up together in one ecosystem. And again, just to buttress that point, there is need to recognize that in an ecosystem of this kind, move on. The next, yes. Pillars of the innovation ecosystem from the Kenya National Innovation Agency has defined these as the pillars of the ecosystem in this country. The human capital, both the young and the old. The young people who are very much involved in startups, in innovation, and developing themselves to get into the high research space, including those who are leading, the professors who can nurture these younger generations. So the human capital, very, very critical there as one of the pillars. Market accessibility. If you're talking about a startup, you have to look at where are you going to sell the idea or the product. What service, what area are you focusing on to? What is the problem that you want to solve? So you just don't begin without thinking about the market of the area of innovation. Then financial access, and this is where I've already mentioned the venture capitals and others who want to invest in an idea which they think is good and relevant to their business, and the policy frameworks which must exist in order for us to have a thriving and supportive ecosystem, and of course the infrastructure here, including ICT infrastructure and all the others that support the entire ecosystem. Next. So the role of innovation on research, that ecosystem on research. I've identified 4 areas here. First is the collaborative opportunities that must come through. Collaboration among researchers to enhance the research quality and the scope. And that's where the National Research document, or rather repository that we are launching today, comes in handy. And then research commercialization. The other day we were having a debate on whether commercialization comes first or research. with Professor Micheka there, and it was quite a very interesting debate, those of you who attended that commercialization week discussion. So research commercialization, collaborating with industry partners to enable researchers to commercialize their findings, transforming them into marketable products or services, which is highly encouraged during some of those sales, that commercialization enterprise, entrepreneurial leaders conference that happens each year. Then access to resources. I've already mentioned researchers benefit from diverse resources and funding sources within the ecosystem, and self-generation of these as these startups or projects get into maturity levels. And then of course networking, and one of which we are doing here right now, cultivates a culture of knowledge sharing and networking, hence the repository that we talked about here. Very, very relevant. These are definitions, official definitions from reliable sources. So what you're doing here is very, very much relevant to what is acceptable. And sharing, networking, connecting researchers with peers, experts, and policy makers. Can move on. So then, NRA, the National Research Repository itself, how is it being supported, or how is it supporting that ecosystem? So the NRL serves as a central platform for accessing and sharing research information produced in Kenya and even beyond. So you can imagine a giant digital library dedicated to the Kenyan research, right? That is what has been described here today. The video summarizes it so well, and I gathered quite a number of key things from that video. Issues of the index going up, the research index increasing, information-led policy decisions so that you don't make decisions which are not informed from data. It creates awareness from what Madam Monica talked about, access, enabling potential users to increase their research agenda and activities. So that is how this is supporting and being supported by that ecosystem. Can move on. So the key roles, in my understanding, when I went through the policy document and from what I understand in research and innovation, this is what I was able to pick for purposes of this discussion this morning. The NRR, or on an innovation ecosystem, supports facilitating access, which has already been mentioned, researchers, policymakers, students, and the general public, right, can access a wealth of information through user-friendly search functions. Instead of you grappling and going through the decisions, because you're accessing quality gleaned data which benefits from technology such as AI and other indigenous products. Then encouraging knowledge sharing, as I've already mentioned, promotes open access. Something that we've been talking about, to research, fostering collaboration and knowledge exchange within the Kenyan research community, and of course preserving intellectual capital. Professor Micheka has already mentioned that you make a difference between what is it that you want to protect through IP and other assets which are available, and what is it that you want to make in the open access repository. I think that's left to individuals in that particular respect. But more importantly, in the open access policy, which Joy has already mentioned here, we are trying to say everything should be available. Just like the Open University, we are available 24/7, flexible. Okay, you can, University Mkononi, all right? Yes, admission criteria, which is very flexible, all right? Admissions throughout. So that is the direction by the universities and research in the world as we look at it from the lens of today. Then move on, the next slide, please. So very specifically, the Open University contributes into this ecosystem in just a few areas for now. Role as a key player, The university stands out as a pivotal institution in Kenya's innovation ecosystem, bridging academia, industry, and government. Because we are a young university beginning, as we can say, at the pedestal of where we have found ourselves in. In technology, they call it leapfrogging, Professor Kashoda. You join at the very top of what you find available. You don't begin from the beginning. You join where the others have already made a very nice bed for you. So we are right there, committed to research and innovation. The university is committed to research innovation through the support, discussions, and other collaborations that we are already engaged in through one of the biggest universities in the world, 3 million students, IGNO, USAID, which is discussing with us, World Bank, and very soon we'll be discussing with the British Council on how they can come on board on this particular aspect. And alignment with the national research repository goals, the values of openness. I say the Open University has 5 pillars: the openness, access, flexibility, inclusivity, and affordability, all right, are aligned with the goals of the National Research Repository. Next. Now, in terms of universities in general, as a university leader, I am looking at the repository as coming in very handy in supporting academia and research programs in universities through generation of valuable research outputs, which will find their very safe home at that repository for others to access, to enhance, to extend, utilize, and create more research products. Open access, which has been ably mentioned through the presentation of Joy there, universities and particularly even the University of Open University of Kenya champion open access principles, all right, aligning with the repository's goals of inclusivity and accessibility. The other day, I was in Mombasa for a conference being organized by the university's forum, and one friend of mine, Mr. Ringera, the CEO of HELP, told me, Open University, my friend, you should be walking with your chest open because you are open and everything is open. I said, no, that's going too far. So promotion and advocacy. Universities certainly must promote the usage of that repository. And that's why there's a very high power delegation here of librarians who are the custodian of this information, the directors of research who are here, and of course the vice chancellors, very well represented here, so as to make sure that that is promoted. Having a very good repository that is not accessible, I think will be a disservice to those who have supported this noble cause. Hopefully, very soon we'll be getting statistics, Prof, on how this repository is being used on maybe university or research by research basis, so that we can encourage the utilization of this excellent idea. And navigating into the future, as I conclude, universities need to, of course, continue to evaluate and give feedback, encourage ongoing evaluation and feedback mechanisms to assess the effectiveness of the repository and identify areas of improvement. We began with 3 areas: water, land, and energy. That is just scratching the surface. We have a lot more areas to bring on board. And as we bring them on board, we give feedback and improve on how we harness that information and repository for the other sectors. Community engagement, emphasizing the importance of the community to engage initiatives to promote awareness and usage of the repository among researchers, policymakers, and the public. Of course, we're not going to ask people not conversant with research to use the repository, but we use it and help the others to scale their capabilities. And usage, of course, encourage usage of the repository and gain from these invaluable resource offerings and opportunities. In conclusion, I'm saying a call for action. Researchers to actively contribute to the National Research Repository by publishing our findings in the open access format. All right, that is one call for action. Think about it as you ponder over what Professor Micheka mentioned. Entrepreneurs leverage on the repository to identify research gaps that translate into promising innovation opportunities, even for the venture capitalists, the startups and others in that space. Of course, policymakers need to utilize the research data from repository to inform evidence-based policies and decisions. Usage at the Open University of Kenya, we continue, and other universities, of course, to expand access to research and education, fostering a more inclusive and knowledgeable innovation ecosystem through increased enrollment as we give skills and empower the people of Kenya. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
A round of applause to Professor Mwega. Thank you, Prof. We are talking about digital. Those on Twitter or currently X, please, there was a paper being taken around, and you gave permission, isn't it, for photographs? So you can take those one and post them in #research-repository, okay? #research-repository. You can post what is happening here, and we'll be happy about it. Before we go for tea, I would want to ask a representative of the CEO of Konza Technopolis. I know Professor Munavu talked about Konza. Stella, are you around? Yes, karibu. Giving you about 13 minutes.
Good morning. I apologize for standing between you and tea. My name is Stella Muhoro from Konza Technopolis. My apologies to Professor. When you asked if there are CEOs in the house to stand up, I was still consulting my boss whether it's a career limiting move to stand up. But he gave me permission, but the chance had already passed. So yes, the CEO of Konza Technopolis, Mr. John Okwiri, has asked me to come here and represent him. And he did give me some remarks, which are very brief for this session. But allow me to add to what my chairman had said, that Konza Technopolis, who knows about Konza Technopolis? I'm looking. I like when I'm a lecturer. Yes, thank you very much. Konza Technopolis is a Vision 2030 project. It is one of the better known of the Vision 2030 projects. It is more than just a city, because I know a lot of you have land. Who has land near Konza? Me, I have, by the way. And I bought before I knew I'll work for Konza. So it is more than just that. It is actually an intervention by government to try and be able to take advantage of the emerging opportunities that were presented by technological advancement and focus on innovation. So we are a complementary project, not in conflict with any of the other areas of growth, but really we are very focused on delivering on Kenya's vision to deliver to the people of Kenya, a newly industrializing, say with me, a newly industrializing, middle income country offering a good quality of life for its citizens. So you see the scope of the vision is pretty broad, and we are very happy to be here. Today, as I sat there, all I've had is good things, a lot of answers to the questions we have had. I'm very happy to note that a lot of the challenges, the questions we ask ourselves, allow me to speak in Swahili when we ask in the layman language that is not research-ish, academic. We ask, watu walikuwa wapi akala zikienda? Akala. If you come where I come from, you know that akala is safety shoes. walikuwa wapi? So sometimes I wonder, akina nani, but today I've found the akina nani, it is this community, because that there are people who are actually doing something about it. So it's a very exciting day for myself, and I am sure I'll be able to get the same response from the community at Konza. So I want to go to his remarks, in case he doesn't allow me to stand here next time. So I'll read his remarks. I'll go to the all protocols observed part and say good morning. Now I'm the CEO. Good morning. The other. Sorry. The other good morning was for Stella, so the CEO needs a better response to good morning. Okay, it gives me immense pleasure to stand before you today on this auspicious occasion, the launch of the National Research Repository by the National Research Fund in collaboration with the British Council. The event marks a significant milestone in our journey towards fostering innovation, collaboration, and sustainable development in our beloved nation. At Konza Technopolis, a flagship project of the Vision 2030, that is aimed at propelling Kenya into the forefront of technology and innovation of the African continent, we are aware of the critical role that research and development plays in shaping the future of our nation. Innovation is the cornerstone of progress, and research is the bedrock upon which innovation is built. The launch of the National Research Repository symbolizes our commitment to nurturing a culture of research excellence in Kenya. This repository will serve as a centralized platform where researchers from across the country can share their findings, collaborate on projects, and access a wealth of knowledge that will drive our collective efforts towards addressing the challenges facing our society. But beyond facilitating collaboration and knowledge sharing, the National Research Repository holds the promise of democratizing access to information. By making research findings freely available to all, we will be leveling the playing field and empowering individuals from diverse backgrounds to contribute meaningfully to the advancement of knowledge and innovation. Furthermore, the establishment of this repository underscores our unwavering dedication to harnessing the transformative power of technology for the greater good. In today's digital age, information is the currency of progress, and by leveraging technology to create a repository of knowledge, we are laying the groundwork for a brighter, more prosperous future for generations to come. As we embark on this journey, let us not forget the importance of nurturing our homegrown talent. Our researchers and innovators are our greatest assets. And it is incumbent upon us to provide them with the support, resources, and opportunities that they need to thrive. Through initiatives like the National Research Repository, we are not only celebrating the achievements of our researchers, but also investing in the next generation of trailblazers who will carry the torch of innovation forward. In conclusion, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to all the individuals and organizations who have contributed to the realization of this vision. Your dedication and commitment have made this moment possible, and I have no doubt that together we will continue to push the boundaries of knowledge, creativity, and innovation in Kenya and beyond. Thank you. As he comes, I hope that this fund will be hosted at the Konza National Data Center. Thank you for confirming.
Thank you very much. As I said earlier, we'll have a reflection session after tea, that's question and answers. So if you have any issues, please note them down. The presenters will be available to address some of the issues we'll be having or questions. We'll go for tea, and we are just being given only 30 minutes for tea. We come back so that we can continue. But before we do that, can we applaud the presenters for this? Karibuni chai.